D. Recordigalere, my name is James Nagle. Welcome to The Irish Nation Lives. The Spanish flu killed tens of millions of people, more than died in combat in the entire First World War. Mortality rates peaked in October and November of 1918, but a second wave struck in late February of 1919. Amongst those to die, on the 6th of March, was the East Tipperary TD Pierce McCan. McCan had been arrested in the German plot roundup in May and, like many others, was held in prison even after his victory at the December general election. Following the escape of Éamon de Valera from Lincoln Jail, the Lord Lieutenant, Lord French, called for the release of the remaining German plot prisoners. He believed that Sinn Féin was being dominated by extremists in the absence of de Valera and other moderates like Arthur Griffith, and he put forward the killing of 2 RIC officers at Solohead Beg in January as proof of this. The authorities refused, but McCan's death forced them to rethink their position. To prevent further deaths from the pandemic, which would create martyrs and feed into anti-British propaganda, all remaining internees were released in the middle of March. At this time, de Valera was in Liverpool making final preparations to travel to the United States of America. There was a larger Irish population in the US than there was in Ireland itself, and they made up an important political lobby group, especially within the Democratic Party. De Valera's aim was to secure a meeting with President Wilson and mobilise the wider Irish-American community to agitate for recognition of the Irish Republic. However, the release of the German plot prisoners meant that a full meeting of Dáil Éireann could take place, and he returned home to begin preparations for a meeting in early April. On the 22nd of March, a notice appeared in the newspapers, signed by Harry Boland and Tom Kelly of Sinn Féin, that on the 26th de Valera would be met at the gates of Dublin City by the Lord Mayor and escorted to a reception at the Mansion House. This was an honour reserved for the royal family, and Dublin Castle moved quickly to ban the procession. The notice caused considerable confusion, as no one within Sinn Féin knew who had issued it. A meeting of the Sinn Féin executive was held on the 24th of March, chaired by Arthur Griffith, to discuss this matter. When questioned at the meeting, Tom Kelly stated that the first he had heard about the reception was when he read about it in the newspapers. Darrell Figgis describes what happened next. Michael Collins rose. Characteristically, he swept aside all pretences and said that the announcement had been written by him, and that the decision to make it had been made not by Sinn Féin, but by the Irish Volunteers. He spoke with much more vehemence and emphasis, saying that the sooner fighting was forced and a general state of disorder created through the country, the better it would be for the country. Ireland was likely to get more out of the state of general disorder than from a continuance of the situation as it then stood. As I looked on him as he spoke, for all the hostility between us, I found something refreshing and admirable in his contempt for all of us. Collins, along with Harry Boland, had grown in prominence following the German plot roundup, taking on as a substitute the functions of the arrested leaders. Like many in the Irish Volunteers, of which he was Director of Organisation and Director of Intelligence, Collins was eager to see a resort to arms and had little faith in appeals to the Paris Peace Conference. In his mind, force would be needed, if for nothing more than to act as leverage to bring Britain to the negotiating table. Collins argued that they should disregard the ban and go ahead with the reception. Griffith was outraged with his brazen attitude, but agreed to go along with a majority vote of the party. The matter was settled, however, when de Valera asked that the reception be cancelled instead of risking a confrontation with the authorities. The moderates, who believed that the time was not yet right for force or who disagreed entirely with its use, had won, and Collins would find himself sidelined in the months to come. After his lengthy spell in prison, Éamon de Valera set about reasserting his control of Sinn Féin, which meant total agreement with his views. In May, Collins would write to Austin Stack, saying that things were being made intolerable for militants. De Valera's departure for the United States in June would give Collins the breathing space he needed to begin his intelligence war. Throughout the country, raids for arms were still being carried out with great intensity. On the 19th of March, the largest raid of the War of Independence was carried out at Collinstown Aerodrome, now Dublin Airport. Patrick Holohan worked at Collinstown and alerted the Volunteers' General Headquarters to the arsenal of weapons being kept there. Having poisoned the guard dogs earlier in the day, Holohan led a group of about 25 men into the aerodrome and took the guards by surprise. They managed to secure 75 rifles and 4,000 rounds of ammunition, a massive haul at a time when weapons were being taken in ones and twos from RIC patrols. The following morning, Holohan and the other workers returned to the aerodrome as if nothing had happened. A much different attack occurred in Mayo at the end of the month. John Milling, a resident magistrate since 1914, had earned a reputation for passing harsh sentences on members of the Irish Volunteers. He was sent threatening letters and had put in a request for a transfer after his racing yacht was burned at Westport Quay, but while waiting for an answer, he was shot on the 29th of March and died a few days later. While Dan Breen and Sean Tracy may have been intent on killing someone, the Solohead Beg ambush was a raid for arms. The attack on Milling, however, was targeted, aimed purely at removing an opponent of the Irish Volunteers. These were the types of attacks favoured by Michael Collins, and following the departure of de Valera, he would establish the Squad to carry out similar assassinations in Dublin. While the Catholic Church denounced the Milling attack, public reaction was more sedate, and there was no outcry as there had been following Solohead Beg. Irish attitudes were beginning to harden against those seen as serving an alien regime, a condition that would be needed for a nationwide ramp-up in violence to occur. Accorda, thank you for joining me on The Irish Nation Lives. Slán go fóill.